Well, hey there, everyone. Andy Serwich here with Altaro Software, and we're trying something new today. We figured we'd try out Facebook Live here a little bit to kind of come and talk to you folks here on Facebook. And I'm joined today by Ryan Birk. How's it going, Ryan?
It's going good.
Well, hey, Ryan, you recently put together an ebook for us, and we wanted to come on today and kind of talk with you a little bit about the ebook and a little bit about what's contained in the ebook and who it's for, and we'll get to that stuff here in a second. But the first thing I really wanted to do was take a little bit of time and talk about you for a minute. Can you kind of tell people a little bit more about yourself? Kind of how you got started with vSphere and what you do on a day-to-day basis.
Sure. Yeah. My background from a VMware perspective, I've been doing this stuff for a long time since it was since basically GSX existed before ESX, and I worked with ESX and then ESXi, and I call myself a virtualization snob, so I thoroughly love this stuff. But I was a consultant, so I did a lot of consulting over the years with people from SMBs, medium-sized businesses, all the way up through the big Fortune 500 companies. And now what I do is I'm actually a VMware certified instructor, so I actually teach the official VMware classes for actual VMware. I work for a company called New Horizons, and we do, basically I teach the actual classes people are going to take for certification. So some of the more popular classes like the vSphere ICM classes. I'll teach like the Horizon classes, so virtual desktops and things like that. But I've been doing that now since, been several years. I forgot. At least 5 years I've been working on doing that stuff. So the cool part about that is I just get into some of the more bleeding edge stuff. I'm also a V expert, so I get to work with the vSphere betas and things like that. So I'm always trying to work on. I got a home lab. I'm a big advocate of that. So I'm always spinning stuff up in my home lab, playing around with stuff. But as an instructor, it's definitely cool because you can get access to a lot of different things, and you can play around with stuff, and you just get to see stuff. A lot of times before it kind of hits the general public, being a part of the betas and stuff like that as well. So.
Yeah, definitely. So I imagine as being an instructor, you're teaching it day in and day out, right? I mean, you mentioned the install config manage class. At least I seem to remember that's what the acronym stood for.
Yeah.
But I imagine teaching it day in and day out, you're getting really specific, interesting questions. You're covering, all the nuts and bolts of the product. So I imagine that really puts you in a good place to know the product frontwards and backwards and, every other direction, right?
Right. When you teach the classes, you'll have, when you teach the ICM and the install configure manage classes, there's generally always certain questions that will come up. Every class is different. Some classes there's more advanced people in there, and sometimes there's more people who are just starting out with the product. But it doesn't matter who it is, no matter what class it is. You generally always get asked certain things. And over the years, you kind of stockpile those things.
Right.
You're thinking about it in the back of your head, like, okay, I know what these people are going to ask. I have a feeling that when I hit this slide and we're going to go to the next one, there's going to be somebody asking me a question about this. A lot of times it's about configuration, going out, networking, storage, those kinds of things. Where you can kind of read people's minds, and then you kind of go through and you sometimes you'll get hit up by completely random things. You get thrown off into the left field, and you got to go research it and that kind of stuff. And that's a pretty cool thing to do. But yeah, it's always something new. Even though you teach the same classes, there's always different types of students, different people who are doing different things. Most vSphere environments, as similar as they are, there's a lot of differences as well.
Right. It kind of puts you in an interesting spot. So yeah, it's really kind of interesting to hear that viewpoint of it. So, well, for those of you that are just joining us, again, I'm here with Ryan Birk. He is a VMware vExpert and a VMware trainer, and he recently, again, authored an ebook for us about mastering vSphere. So if you're interested in getting a little bit more information about that, go ahead and click the link, underneath this video. Included the link to that ebook here. Again, that's a free ebook about mastering vSphere. Now, with that in mind, Ryan, let's tell the viewers a little bit about what this ebook is about. Can you kind of tell us who the ebook is targeted at, and maybe kind of give us kind of a rough general outline of what's contained within the ebook itself?
Yeah. So the way we did this one is we've broken this down into like 4 different sections. Now, this book is probably written from a perspective of people who have been working with it for a little bit, and maybe there's also people who are starting out. I think there's a good mixture of kind of just some of the basics. There's also some more of the, some more advanced topics in there and stuff. There's going to be some things that are not everybody's going to use, like a scripted installation, but it's kind of nice because you can kind of go out and there's all kinds of stuff in there in terms of it. But we've broken it into to 4 sections. So the way I've done this is we kind of start off with like the host configuration. So we'll actually do it. We'll start off with hosts, kind of setting up, like I said, scripted installations. In terms of that, like, when we talk about installing ESXi, VMware's made it relatively easy. So one of the things we want to do is kind of, jump into kind of cover some of the more, advanced, kind of automated installations. Because once you do it, once or twice, you're like, this is boring. I don't want to do it the same old install anymore. So if I have to do this 10 more times, I might as well automate the process. So we kind of jump into that. Talk about the kickstart scripts and that kind of stuff. And I've got the second section. We talk about shared storage, some of the benefits of that, and we talk specifically about the different platforms like iSCSI and vSAN, some of the benefits there that they'll get you, and then networking, some of the best practices around that. And then there's another section too that a lot of people, they always forget about it. I've had lots of students over the years who forget about logs. They never, nobody wants to talk about logs. I've never met anybody who's like, oh yes, that's so exciting, logs. Let's but the thing is you have to know how to work with that stuff. You have to know how to set them up. You got to know what to look for, and some of the best practices around log analysis. So different sections, that we would have. I mean, they're all kind of different. Ultimately, I feel like you could write a million different sections when it comes down to vSphere, but we got to pick out some of the ones that are, the really heavy, the ones that I feel like a lot of people would ultimately spend time in and get value out of.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point there is, what topics inside of vSphere do you get value out of? And I mean, you mentioned logs. Sure logs, they're not sexy, right? I mean, it's not like this amazing feature, but I mean, it's something that everybody needs eventually. I mean, eventually something is going to break or something is not going to run exactly the way that it's supposed to, and ultimately you're going to need to know where those logs are, how to parse them, how to interpret them, and I think the ebook covers that in great detail. So that was a really good section. I'm glad we were able to get in there.
Yeah, I've never met anybody who's like, oh yeah, logs are my number one thing, But again, it has to be talked. We have to do this stuff. We have to know where to go. So.
Yep, definitely.
Another cool section we do too that's in the ebook is on auto deploy. So auto deploy, like we're talking about with automated installs, like when you start doing 1 or 2 hosts, and if you have got 5 hosts or less, you might say, I'll just do them all manually. But once you start getting, I tell people when you do this stuff manually a couple of times, and once you get bored with that, you're going to figure out other ways to do these things. So like auto deploy and that kind of stuff is one. There's just some of those sections where it's just beneficial if you kind of learn it. And not only that, but if you actually, if you're actually planning on going for like certification tests and stuff like that. If you look at the exam blueprints for like the actual VMware certifications and stuff, it's not just basic stuff. They want you to know some of the other, what's auto deploy? How do we do it? How do we configure it? How do we do this stuff? So that's beneficial there as well if anybody's going to go through and try to take any kind of certification exams.
Nice. So, I think you mentioned auto deploy a couple of times. I think one really important demographic area, I guess I would say, around auto deploy would be like service providers, MSPs. Somebody who is going to be installing ESXi on a regular basis, or maybe you're a hoster of some sort and you've got, ESXi hosts that you're spinning up inside of your data center on a regular basis. That auto deploy function really comes in handy in that situation. And I mean, not only from an ease of use perspective, but, I look at myself, I'm a human, I make mistakes, right? So, I mean, automating that and removing the human element from that process, I think there's a lot of value in that as well.
Yeah, missed typos and all that kind of stuff gets everybody at some point or another.
Yep, exactly. I mean, computers, they do exactly what you tell them to do, right? That's why stuff breaks sometimes. So.
Yep, I screw up many times, and then you learn from it, and you're like, man, I should have just automated it.
That's right. Well, hey, again, to those that are just joining us, again, we're here with Ryan Birk. He has authored our latest ebook on Mastering vSphere. Again, if you want to pick up a copy of that, feel free to click on the link, again, below this video. You can go ahead and get your free copy of the ebook there. So, Ryan, just a couple more minutes here. I don't want to keep people too long, but I wanted to cover a couple of questions that I've gotten over some different mediums here since we've come out with the ebook. And a couple of the questions that I've gotten, and if you're watching the live stream today, feel free to comment and ask us some questions. We'll be sure to get you an answer either on the stream right now or after the fact. But a couple that I've gotten via email and some community posting. The first one kind of centers around that whole idea of containerization. That's a big thing in the industry right now, right? And the question really comes down to, with containerization being such a big thing in the industry right now, what about containers on vSphere? Is that something that we should be looking at from a training perspective right now? Is it getting to that point to where people should start looking at it?
Yeah. So when it comes down to that stuff, I wouldn't deny its popularity for sure. It's definitely growing. I think they kind of serve, VMs and containers. They kind of serve kind of two different purposes in a way. VMware's kind of announced just recently the Kubernetes engine, that they've came out with, and the vSphere integrated containers. It's definitely been a push. In terms of the actual classes and such, those are more or less slow growers, is what I would say. There's people there's lots of businesses who say, I'm going to go with the VM route and I'm going to stick with the VM route because that's what I know. But I think, in terms of developers, and if you have a company where you're doing a lot of developing containers and specifically containers on vSphere, it's nice because you can ultimately integrate them. You can take you got your existing VM environment. You want to stack up containers on top of it, or next to it, I should say. Probably is the more technical term. You want to go out and you want to do different things. I think from a development standpoint, they're definitely gaining speed. In terms of, just, hey, I just need one app stack and I can spin this stuff up and I can do this right here next to all my VMs, and it's nice because it's integrated. But,
right.
I don't, it's not something that, at least from me, in terms of my, what I've noticed, it's not something that is I would still say primarily, from a VMware standpoint, vSphere is that's what they do.
Right.
When we think VMware as in general, we think VMs. We don't necessarily think, containers are the next big, the next thing.
Right.
In terms of VMware, but yeah, in terms of what Kubernetes and Docker is doing, for sure. I definitely think they definitely have their places for sure.
Gotcha. Good to know. Another question that we had here was centered kind of around vSAN. There's been a big push from VMware lately about vSAN, and just the industry in general about hyper-converged infrastructure, right? It's kind of a big thing in the industry lately as well, just like containerization. The question really comes down to this. When it comes to storage, should we be prioritizing vSAN over iSCSI or NFS? Basically the question comes down to, should we be implementing vSAN just for the sake of implementing vSAN?
I wouldn't say implement it just for the sake of implementing vSAN, but I will say that in my classes that I typically have ran, I've always asked the question, what type of storage is everybody running? All right, and if we go back to vSphere 5.5, when vSAN first came out, I would ask that question, and people would laugh. I'd say, who's running vSAN? Raise your hand. And people would laugh at me. All right, I'm not running that stuff. And it's I'm using a fiber channel, or I'll use NFS, or I'll use iSCSI, or I'll use something else. And okay, well, fine. vSphere 6 comes out. You ask that question. A couple people raise their hand. All right, 6.5. All of a sudden, I will say that if you look at what VMware's updating, if you actually go into their patches and you look at the stuff that they're developing, vSAN, in almost every single update that VMware releases, vSAN is being updated.
Right.
So they are constantly improving vSAN to the point where there's more and more people now. Now, ultimately, when I'm teaching a class of, let's say just 12 students or so, I ask that question. I say, who's looking at vSAN or who's running vSAN? And I'll get 40-50% of my class that will raise their hand now. So it's interesting over the years who are like, I'm moving away from it. My fiber channel, I'm getting away from that. I'm gonna get away from NFS. I'm gonna go to vSAN. I do think that HCI in general is insanely cool. It's a game changer. You think about in the early days when you had a remote location, it was small and you only had 3 hosts, and you were trying to justify the purchase of a SAN. It was difficult.
Right.
Now it's hey, we can do that. We can use vSAN. Boom. No, it's not even you don't even think about it. But yeah, it's definitely growing. I would say definitely learn vSAN. vSAN is it's a game changer for me. I love the HCI concept is really cool. I'm excited to go to VMworld this year and kind of see what's out there and just see the different storage vendors, because that stuff it's a changing market all the time.
Yeah, definitely.
So.
Yeah, it's exciting stuff. Just to see the changes in the industry, and kind of, one of the things that I always enjoy doing is kind of seeing what are the applications for all this new stuff, where can I apply it? And that's really cool to kind of see that with vSAN and kind of see how it's evolved over the last a couple of iterations. So.
Yep.
Well, hey, Ryan, I think we're about wrapped for time. I want to say thanks for taking the time to come talk to us today. And again, thanks for putting together this ebook. And it's, like I said, it's a lot of great content, so really appreciate your time doing that.
Yeah, no problem. Glad to help.
Yeah, and again, to all you viewers out there, if you want to pick up a copy of the free VMware ebook that Ryan wrote for us, again, that's about mastering vSphere. Go ahead and click the link, again, below this video. And I want to say thanks for watching, and be sure to stay tuned for future Altaro videos and other great content. Thanks for watching.